So, as I've been going through talking about various institutions and things that we need to watch at those institutions as we work through spring and go towards fall camp, inevitably we need to stop in Austin and talk about the Texas Longhorns, an institution which was already going to garner the attention of much of the college football world, as those individuals were wondering what Steve Sarkisian and company would be able to do in year two as the Texas Longhorns head coach, what strides would be able to be made. But unfortunately for Steve Sarkisian, those eyes have now exponentially increased based on the comments by a veteran defensive player for the Longhorns, Moro Ojomo. Today, we need to break down what Ojomo said, give my take on the whole situation, but before we do, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Were you surprised by what Ojomo said? And then let me know your take on the situation. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. I'm on my push to 15,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you a part of our community. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, we need to break all of this down because this was an intriguing situation to me. One that is only going to increase what people are expecting out of the Texas Longhorns. It's only going to increase the amount of people watching the Texas Longhorns and the curiosity shrouding the program. But before we can break down any of it, we need to have at least a base understanding of what Ojomo said. And though I'm not going to go through the whole quote, we're going to paraphrase here. And to start it off, he was talking about how the young guys on the team are more interested in NIL, women, and alcohol than they are at the present job at hand. On top of that, guys don't know what a winning culture looks like, as none of them have really been a part of a winning culture, or at least the vast majority haven't been a part of a winning culture. Then he kind of talked about the leadership at the top, saying everybody says they want to come in and change things, but the problem is there's 10 years of ingrained problems that they're going to have to work through. It's not going to be as easy as saying things are going to change and then they magically happen, which to me, it sounds like the frustration Ojomo is having is everybody wants to change things, but nobody wants to do the work to be able to actually achieve those changes that are going to be so necessary. And then he kind of talked about NIL, how NIL is a great thing. But in my opinion, the quote he gave that was so powerful was people are focused on the crumbs as opposed to the whole cake, and how NIL has been turning the situation from a we thing into a me thing. And if you're Texas, if you're already trying to establish a positive culture and work through any negatives that your culture has, this is something that Nino from Nino's Sports Corner talked to us about not long ago when I had him on the show. And I asked him the question, if you already have a culture that needs work, introducing something such as NIL can be an incredibly powerful thing if done the right way. However, there's also a negative reaction, as every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The reaction in this circumstance is, even though NIL can be very powerful, it can also be your downfall as the focus shifts. And that's one thing Ojomo talked about, how the younger guys are so much more worried about their social media presence and creating a brand themselves. Henceforth, what I said, it's created a me problem as opposed to what should be a we solution. So when you look at all of those, there are some intriguing things. And like I said, we're not going to go through everything, but that's a basic paraphrase. That the younger guys are more interested in all of the distractions around them, that there's a culture that needs to change. Everybody's talking about changing it, but there are 10 years of problematic behaviors that have been implemented and ingrained into this, and changing it isn't as easy as saying and speaking it into existence. The work must be put in, and Ojomo is worried that the work isn't being put in because of the distractions and because of the NIL. Now, interestingly enough, it did not take Steve Sarkisian long to respond to these comments, and Sark basically said that these sorts of things need to be handled in-house, and if you have good team leadership, then that team leadership should have no problem going to the individuals on the team and having that conversation face-to-face, which I don't disagree with at all. These sorts of things in a perfect world would be handled in-house, and Steve Sarkisian isn't wrong there. The one question I have is, based on what Ojomo said, based on his statements, it sounds like he's tried to do that. multiple times and that the message isn't taking home. And if that's the case, then it has to come from the coaching staff at some point. The coaching staff has got to reinforce the messaging from the team leadership, because if Ojomo, a team leader, is trying to do this and it's falling on deaf ears, he might not have any other outlet than the media. To me, this could have been a sign of desperation from a team leader. Now, maybe it's not. Maybe these conversations haven't happened, but I'm just extrapolating what I can out of the statements given. So when you do that, it did seem to me that Ojomo has tried to have these conversations before and that they've fallen on deaf ears. However, that doesn't diminish that Steve Sarkisian is right. This should have been handled in-house. In a perfect world, this is handled in-house. The media never hears about it, because when you're complaining that there are so many distractions that are keeping you from achieving your ultimate goal, the last thing you want to do is add in another distraction. And in a roundabout way, that's exactly what's just happened here. A statement that was supposed to draw inspiration and say, hey, we've got it, we just need to get our heads right, and we can go forward with this, that now has added another distraction, the very thing you were complaining against. And that's why this situation is so interesting, is there are so many layers to this. On one hand, Ojomo is completely right. If he has, and this is a big if he has tried to go to these individuals, have this conversation, and it's just falling on deaf ears, this was a moment of desperation, trying to get some way that these guys would actually be able to get the message and be able to take it in. However, Steve Sarkisian's also right in that that's not the way you do it. You don't want to bring the media in, especially if you're already worried about distractions surrounding your team, such as alcohol, women, and NIL, and now you've just added a media storm into the whole thing. That wasn't the correct way to go about it. So both individuals have a point. NIL is wonderful. It's awesome that these guys are getting something to benefit them for their name, image, and likeness. It's only right. But at the same time, the NIL is not the end-all, be-all, and what institution can pay the most is great, but the real question is what institutions can develop the most. Because if everybody is getting NIL money, say I make $45,000 less over 3 years going to school Y over school X. But if school Y has 3 times the development rate, my money just increased exponentially. And that is what Ojomo is saying. Until you get to that point, NIL is only a cherry. We need to make the cake to put the cherry on top. Because once you have that, well, now you're dangerous. If Texas gets to the point where they're developing and they have the NIL, now they're dangerous. And now we all need to watch. This is something that inevitably we're going to have to keep an eye on, because this could either be really positive for the Texas Longhorns or it could be negative. Ojomo wasn't trying to be overtly negative, I don't think. I think he was just trying to get a message across. It wasn't the correct way to get it across, but at the point, and if he's tried to do it face to face and it's fallen on deaf ears, he doesn't have another outlet to go except in the media. And that's an unfortunate circumstance if you are Steve Sarkisian, because if he's tried doing this and the young guys just aren't concerned, well, now you have another problem entirely. However, at the end of the day, this could be a catalyst that brings the Longhorns together and gets everybody on the same page, just as logically as this could be a catalyst for more negativity and more toxic culture. It's going to be up to Steve Sarkisian and company to try and sail through the storm, because this is something that's really the last thing they needed, is they're already trying to get Quinn Ewers up to speed, having a quarterback battle, having an offensive line that just isn't where they would like it to be at all. They have plenty of other things to focus on, and this distraction is the last one they needed. So, very interested in hearing from all of you. Hop down to the comments and let me know what you're saying. I'm really intrigued to see what Steve Sarkisian and company are going to be able to do in year 2, especially since my Tide are going to be going to Austin. That's it. See ya.